It began innocently enough.
The news had been warning of the virus for weeks, and when the lockdown was announced, I thought it might be a break from the chaos of daily life, a chance to pause and reset. But I had no idea that those weeks would stretch into months, and the walls of my tiny apartment would become both my sanctuary and my prison.
The first few days were fine.
I worked from home, binged shows, and video called friends. But soon, the days began to blur together. The silence of the apartment grew heavier, and the stillness seemed to seep into my mind.
That's when it started.
At first, it was small things. I would leave my coffee cup on the kitchen counter, only to find it moved to the sink. Lights I was sure I had turned off would flicker back on. I dismissed it as forgetfulness or power surges, anything logical to keep myself grounded. After all, isolation plays tricks on the mind. But then came the knocking. It was faint at first, barely noticeable over the hum of my laptop. A soft, rhythmic tapping that seemed to come from the wall behind my bed. I brushed it off as the neighbor, maybe they were adjusting something, or just restless like the rest of us. But one night, as I lay staring at the ceiling, the knocks grew louder, more deliberate, and unmistakably closer. I pressed my ear to the wall, my heart pounding.
"Hello?"
I called, my voice trembling.
No response.
Just silence, until the knocking resumed, this time from the opposite wall.
Sleep became impossible.
Every night, the knocking would begin not just from the walls, but from the ceiling, the floor, even the doors. It followed no pattern, no rhythm I could decipher, but it always started around 3 a.m.
I tried everything to explain it.
I called the landlord, who swore no one else had reported anything strange. I asked my neighbors, but they only gave me puzzled looks, insisting they'd heard nothing.
By the second week, the noises weren't just knocks.
I began hearing faint whispers. Sometimes it was a single word, unintelligible and guttural. Other times, it was a low murmur, like a conversation taking place just out of earshot. And then there were the shadows. One night, while pacing the living room, I caught movement in the corner of my eye.
A dark figure darted past the kitchen doorway. My stomach dropped.
I grabbed a knife from the counter and searched the apartment, flipping on every light. But there was no one there. Just my reflection staring back at me from the darkened windows, wide-eyed and pale.
After that, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched.
The air felt heavier, thicker, as though something unseen was breathing in the same space as me. My reflection in the mirrors began to look wrong, just slightly off, as though it moved a fraction of a second slower than I did. One night, as I lay in bed, clutching my phone like a lifeline, I felt the mattress shift. It was subtle at first, like the weight of a cat jumping up, except I didn't have a cat. The shift grew heavier, pressing down on the edge of the bed, then crawling closer, as though something was climbing in beside me.
Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe.
The sensation stopped just inches from my back, and I swear I felt the faintest, coldest breath against my neck.
That was the final straw. I fled the apartment at dawn, leaving behind everything but my keys and phone.
I drove aimlessly for hours, too scared to go back but with nowhere else to go. Eventually, I crashed at a friend's place, making up some excuse about plumbing issues.
I never told them the truth. Who would believe me?
When the lockdown eased, I broke my lease and moved out.
To this day, I don't know what I experienced in that apartment. Was it the isolation? Cabin fever? Or something darker, something that thrives on solitude and fear?
Whatever it was, I still hear faint knocks sometimes, late at night, and I can't help but wonder if it followed me.